Let's jump right in. Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're joining us today because we're diving into something truly fascinating about the English language. We're not just, memorizing isolated words or drilling dry grammar rules here. We're actually looking at how English acts as this incredible connective tissue for our wonderfully diverse world. From how we bond with nature to bridging these massive cultural gaps, all the way down to the inner workings of our own bodies, language is the ultimate tool that makes all of this connection possible. To kick things off, I want you to think about a pretty strange question. What do an orphaned ape, a millennial rafting in the Grand Canyon, and your kidneys have in common? I know, right? It sounds exactly like the setup to some bizarre joke, but I promise you there's no punchline here. They are actually all surprisingly perfect vehicles for mastering completely different facets of English. And by the end of this, you'll see exactly how these three totally distinct subjects unlock a much deeper understanding of how we communicate. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, animal friendships and tenses. Second, friendship vocabulary. Third, the generational divide. Fourth, anatomy explained. And finally, medical roleplay and idioms. Starting off with Section 1, animal friendships and tenses. So, language is fundamentally what helps us connect with nature. But more importantly, it lets us precisely describe events and these super unlikely bonds over the passage of time. Let's zero in on present tenses: simple, continuous, and perfect. To really make this concrete, our source material looks at the incredibly heartwarming story of Surya. Surya is an ape who formed this deep, completely unexpected bond with a local dog. It's an absolutely fantastic narrative. But to tell it right, to really do it justice, we have to use the correct tenses to frame the exact timeline of their friendship. Let's actually look at how these tenses work in practice, side by side. The simple present is what we use for established facts. For example, Surya lives with his keepers. That's a constant, it's just a fact. Then we have the present continuous. That captures the action happening right this very second. They are having the time of their lives. And finally, the present perfect, which is like a bridge connecting the past directly to the present. The story has attracted a lot of interest. See how beautifully those verbs capture the timeline of their friendship? You literally need all three of them to give the full, complete picture of their bond. Moving right along to Section 2, friendship vocabulary. Building on that whole idea of bonds, let's shift gears from the actual grammar mechanics to the specific vocabulary we use to describe human connections and interpersonal dynamics. Now, what's really interesting here is how simple visual cues, like a classic fist bump or a handshake, perfectly represent the phrasal verbs we use in everyday English. Think about verbs like hang out, which implies just casually spending time together, or stand by, meaning you're supporting someone when things get really tough. And then there's get along, which describes having this harmonious relationship, even if we have our differences. These phrasal verbs are absolutely essential building blocks for describing how we physically and emotionally connect with one another. Now for Section 3, the generational divide. But what happens when that connection breaks down? Or when people just see the world in fundamentally different ways? Let's take a 4-day rafting trip down the Grand Canyon to explore how different generations connect with nature and with technology. Picture this. We're on this trip and we have a baby boomer father and his millennial son, Casey. They're standing at Lee's Ferry, Arizona, totally surrounded by this glorious public land. The dad looks down at his phone and says, "Darn, no service." But the thing is, for him, that's actually a good thing. He sees being disconnected as the ultimate way to engage with the sublime beauty of the outdoors. But for Casey, who's in his mid-20s, that exact same lack of connection sparks a completely different reality. It just perfectly sets up this narrative tension between the two generations. The source statistics map this divide so clearly. A massive 71% of millennials report that they would be very uncomfortable on a vacation without connectivity. Compare that to just 33% of boomers. The father is out there suggesting staring at the stars and being mindful. But Casey offers this incredibly poignant counter-perspective. He says, "I get it, but everyone I know likes to share publicly what we're doing. If you can't share it now, is it really happening?" Wow. It's such a fascinating look at how our vocabulary around sharing and experiencing has fundamentally shifted. Look, neither side is wrong here, but the language captures this massive generational shift in how we actually process the world around us. That brings us to Section 4, Anatomy Explained.
Okay, from the vast, wide open spaces of the Grand Canyon and our outward connections, let's zoom all the way into the incredibly complex systems inside our own bodies. How do we use English to understand ourselves on a biological level? Well, we start right at the center, the heart. Our source text provides this brilliant metaphor. It describes the heart as a muscular pump, roughly the size of a closed fist, sitting just slightly to the left of the center of your chest. But functionally speaking, it basically acts as the body's ultimate shipping and receiving center.
And here is how it actually achieves that shipping and receiving goal. It is continuously circulating blood throughout your entire body. The outward shipping part delivers crucial oxygen and nutrients to all your other organs, while the receiving aspect, that's all about bringing back and removing the body's waste products. It is just this endless, highly efficient loop. Next up on the anatomical tour, we have the lungs. These are a pair of spongy, air-filled organs situated on either side of the chest. Their primary gig is gas exchange. They pull in the air we breathe, extract the oxygen that our body absolutely needs to stay alive, and then, this is crucial, they get rid of carbon dioxide, which is just a waste gas the body simply doesn't need anymore. Notice how the primary bronchus branches out into these smaller bronchioles and eventually leads to the alveoli. That is where that vital gas exchange is actually taking place. The vocabulary here is so cool because it moves from the macro level, talking about this spongy organ as a whole, all the way down to the microscopic lifelines deep inside us. Now, we've mentioned waste removal a few times already, right? The lungs get rid of carbon dioxide and the heart circulates waste away from our organs. But the true master filters of the entire body are the kidneys. So I have a little mini mystery for you. What kind of specific waste products do you think the kidneys actually remove? Take a guess.
Well, it turns out they handle 4 distinct types of waste. First up is muscle waste, specifically something called creatinine, which is just a normal byproduct of our daily wear and tear. Second, extra fluids. Third, excess salts and minerals, things like sodium and potassium. And fourth, foreign substances. Think along the lines of leftover medications or food additives. And this brilliantly illustrates a metaphor used in the text. The kidneys act exactly like a faucet. They're carefully balancing our body's chemistry and just flushing out any excess water we don't need, so we stay perfectly hydrated. Finally, Section 5, Medical Roleplay and Idioms. So we have all this fantastic anatomical vocabulary now, but how do we actually use it in the real world? Let's move into the practical application of these terms in everyday medical scenarios. If you are ever in a medical consultation, clear English is absolutely critical. The source material outlines this great role-play scenario for heartburn or acid reflux. The doctor has to follow some very specific steps. Step 1, explain the ailment simply. It seems you're experiencing heartburn. Step 2, they must empathetically describe the organ's function. Your stomach's main role is to break down food, but currently, and step 3, they give simple, actionable advice. Mastering this isn't just about knowing the word stomach. It's about connecting with a patient clearly and with real empathy. But here's the thing. Anatomy doesn't just stay trapped in the doctor's office. It literally bleeds into our everyday emotional language. Can you think of any common phrases or idioms in English that use the word heart? One prime example from our text is having a heart of gold. Now, we just learned that the physical heart is a muscular pump the size of a fist, right? But in our emotional vocabulary, saying someone has a heart of gold means they are an incredibly kind and generous person. The physical organ totally transforms into the ultimate symbol for human goodness. Or consider the phrase, wear your heart on your sleeve. This means making your feelings completely, undeniably obvious to everyone else instead of trying to hide them. It perfectly reinforces that deep, inseparable connection between our bodily organs and human expression. We've covered an incredible amount of ground today, from the simple, continuous, and perfect tenses that describe the bond between an ape and a dog, to the vocabulary of millennials and boomers clashing in the Grand Canyon, all the way down to the anatomy of your heart, lungs, and kidneys. And you know what? It all comes back to how we connect. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Whether you're connecting with animals, bridging a massive generational divide, or simply listening to the signals of your own body, how well does your vocabulary capture your world? Thank you so much for exploring with me today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.